6th Avenue at 6:54 in the morning. Midtown Manhattan. December. The kind of cold that turns your breath visible and makes every sound sharp and close. The Hilton Midtown rises above the street like it always does, oblivious to the hour. Inside, the ballroom is being set for an investors' conference. Coffee stations. Padfolios. The ordinary machinery of a corporate morning. A man walks out of the hotel entrance and turns left onto the sidewalk. He is wearing a dark suit. He is carrying nothing. The security camera on the building across the street captures him mid-stride, moving at the pace of someone who has done this 1,000 times, because he has. He is 50 years old. He has a wife and 2 teenage sons in Minnesota. In 3 hours he is scheduled to address a room full of analysts and shareholders. He has done this kind of thing his entire career. He has no reason to believe this morning is different from any other. 43 seconds after he steps onto the sidewalk, a figure emerges from behind a parked vehicle. The figure is wearing a gray hoodie, a face mask, and a backpack. The figure raises a handgun fitted with a silencer. The man in the dark suit is shot twice from behind, once in the back, once in the leg. He falls onto the sidewalk. The figure walks past him, steps over him, fires once more at close range, and walks away. The entire sequence takes less than 90 seconds. The man in the dark suit never got back up. By the time anyone reached him, he was already gone. That man was Brian Thompson, the 50-year-old chief executive officer of UnitedHealthcare, the largest private health insurer in the United States. A father of 2. A University of Iowa graduate who had built a 30-year career in the insurance industry from the ground up. A man who, by every account from the people who worked alongside him and raised children next to him, was quiet, genuine, and deeply private, someone who had never, in 3 decades of public corporate life, sought the spotlight for himself. What happened on that Manhattan sidewalk on December 4, 2024, did not stay on the sidewalk. It reached across every screen in America before the sun had fully risen on the East Coast. Within hours the footage had been watched hundreds of millions of times. Within days the country had divided into camps that argued about what the killing meant, what it said, who the man walking away was, and whether the anger that appeared to motivate him was something the country recognized in itself. The debate has not ended. It is still going. And the trials that will determine the legal outcome of that morning have not yet begun. This is Case Analysis Bureau. This video covers the complete case, who Brian Thompson was before December 4, the 5-day manhunt that ended at a Pennsylvania McDonald's, the red notebook and the 3 words written on the shell casings, every major legal development through March 2026, and what is still ahead. 2 separate trials. State court in June. Federal court in September. Both are coming. Neither has delivered a verdict. Before we go any further, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. We would love to hear from you. And hit that subscribe button right now so you are notified the moment either trial begins. Both are still ahead and we will cover every development from inside the courtroom. Before the name UnitedHealthcare. Before the footage. Before the country decided what his death meant. There was a man. Brian Thompson grew up in Iowa. He earned his degree from the University of Iowa and built his entire career in the health insurance industry, a 30-year ascent through the ranks of one of the most profitable and most contested sectors in the American economy. He became CEO of UnitedHealthcare in 2021. The division he ran insures approximately 50 million Americans and generates more revenue annually than most countries produce in GDP. By every external measure, he had reached the top of his field. The people who knew him personally described someone who did not behave like a man at the top of anything. His neighbors in Maple Grove, Minnesota, described a quiet, approachable presence, someone who showed up at school events, who was present in the way that powerful people often are not. His colleagues described a careful, methodical executive who kept his private life genuinely private. He had received death threats before December 4, 2024. The nature and volume of those threats, and what security measures were or were not taken in response, became part of the conversation in the weeks after his death. What is not in dispute is this: he flew from Minnesota to New York City on the night of December 3. He checked into the Hilton Midtown. He walked out of that hotel alone the following morning to get some air before the conference began. Nobody was with him. Nobody was watching. And nobody stopped what happened next. Brian Thompson was 50 years old. He had 2 sons. He had a career he built over 3 decades. He had a conference to address that morning. He had a flight home to his family scheduled for that evening. None of those things happened. The surveillance footage from the camera across from the Hilton Midtown captured the full sequence. The figure approaching from behind the parked car. The raised weapon. The shots. The deliberate pace of the figure as he stepped past the fallen man and continued up 6th Avenue on foot. No running. No panic. The unhurried walk of someone who had planned this and was executing the plan. At the scene, investigators recovered 2 spent shell casings and a bullet. What was written on them became the most discussed piece of physical evidence in the case, and the clearest window into what the person who fired those shots wanted the world to understand about why. 2 casings had words written on them: deny and depose. The recovered bullet had a 3rd word: delay. Those 3 words, delay, deny, depose, form the title of a book written in 2010 by attorney Jay Feinman about the insurance industry's claim settlement practices. The phrase describes a legal strategy in which insurers delay processing claims, deny valid claims outright, and defend those denials in court until policyholders give up or die. The weapon was a ghost gun, a firearm assembled from commercially purchased parts with no serial number, untraceable by conventional means. It was fitted with a silencer. The shooter wore a gray hoodie, a face mask covering the lower half of his face, and carried a backpack. He walked north from the scene, passed through Central Park, and disappeared into the city. For 5 days, the identity of the shooter was unknown. The NYPD released still images from the footage. They released images of the backpack. They identified a water bottle purchased at a Starbucks near the scene. They tracked the shooter's path through Central Park. They identified a taxi he had taken. The investigation moved at a speed that produced enormous public coverage and almost no confirmed information about who the figure in the gray hoodie actually was. Then, on December 9, 2024, 5 days after the shooting, a call came in from a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, nearly 300 miles from the scene of the killing. A customer had recognized the man sitting at a table from the images being circulated nationally. Altoona police responded. The man had a backpack with him. Inside that backpack, officers found a handgun consistent with the weapon used in the shooting, a silencer, a loaded magazine with bullets wrapped in underwear, multiple fake identification cards, a water bottle, and a red notebook. The man's name, according to one of those identification cards, was Luigi Mangione. The red notebook found in Mangione's backpack contained handwritten entries that federal prosecutors later described as expressing hostility toward the health insurance industry and toward wealthy executives in particular. The entries described his own physical suffering, his view of the insurance system as predatory, and what appeared to be a justification for what he had done. He had also written, on a separate document found with his possessions, something that investigators described as a manifesto, a statement of grievance addressed to the American public about the human cost of insurance claim denials. What happened in the days and weeks after his arrest was something that no one in law enforcement, media, or public life appeared to have fully anticipated. Mangione became, to a significant portion of the American public, not a murder suspect but a symbol. Fundraisers for his legal defense raised substantial sums within days. Mail flooded the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn where he was being held. A statement released through his defense team, which he said he had read and endorsed, described being overwhelmed by and grateful for the outpouring of support and noted that the support had transcended political, racial, and class divisions. An opinion survey conducted in the weeks following the arrest showed that a majority of Americans found the killing unacceptable, but that a plurality of younger respondents did not. And that a majority of Americans believed that the denial of healthcare coverage had contributed to what had happened on that Manhattan sidewalk. None of that public response constitutes a legal defense. But it became the backdrop against which every courtroom proceeding since December 2024 has taken place, and it is the backdrop against which both trials will unfold. Still with me, drop "I'm still here" in the comments. And tell us honestly, when you first saw that footage, what was your reaction? Not to the killing, to what came after it. The public response. The fundraisers. The mail. We want every perspective in this comment section. Hit that like button too. One tap keeps Brian Thompson's name at the center of this conversation. What is unfolding in the courts is almost as complicated as the public response, and the legal decisions made in the first 15 months have already reshaped the case in ways that will define both trials. Mangione faces prosecution in 3 separate jurisdictions. The primary case is in New York State, where he is charged with murder in the second degree, criminal possession of a weapon, and possession of a forged instrument, the fake identification cards found in his backpack. The top charge carries a maximum sentence of 25 years to life. The state trial is currently scheduled to begin June 8, 2026. The federal case, prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, originally charged Mangione with 4 counts, including a murder charge that carried the possibility of the death penalty. That murder charge was the centerpiece of the Trump administration's push for a capital sentence, described by Attorney General Pam Bondi as a premeditated, cold-blooded assassination that shocked America. It was the first federal capital case brought by the Justice Department in the second Trump administration. In January 2026, U.S. District Judge Margaret Garnett dismissed 2 of those 4 federal counts, including the murder charge that had enabled the death penalty. Her reasoning was technical but significant. The law required that the killing be committed during another crime of violence. The remaining federal charges, 2 counts of stalking, do not meet that definition under applicable case law. The judge acknowledged in her written opinion that the result may strike people as tortured and strange, but that it reflected her committed effort to faithfully apply what the Supreme Court had established. 2 weeks later, federal prosecutors announced they would not appeal the ruling. The death penalty is off the table. Federal jury selection is now scheduled for September 8, 2026. A third prosecution exists in Pennsylvania, in Altoona, where Mangione was arrested. Those charges relate to the circumstances of his apprehension and remain pending with no trial date set. The most consequential pre-trial fight in both the state and federal cases involves the contents of the backpack. Mangione's defense team, led by attorney Karen Friedman Agnifilo, has argued in both proceedings that the search of the backpack at the time of arrest was unconstitutional because officers did not have a warrant. The federal judge ruled the search was reasonable and the backpack contents are admissible in the federal case. The state judge has not yet issued a ruling. That decision is expected at the May 18 hearing, at which point a firm state trial date will also be set. If the backpack evidence is excluded in the state case, the prosecution's ability to connect Mangione physically to the weapon used in the shooting is significantly weakened. The state charges related to terrorism, murder in the first degree under New York's terrorism statute, were dismissed at a grand jury stage after the judge found the evidence legally insufficient to support them. Mangione was not charged with terrorism. He was charged with intentional murder. That distinction matters legally and it matters symbolically, because the terrorism charge would have required the prosecution to prove that the killing was intended to intimidate or coerce a civilian population or government, a threshold the evidence, as presented, did not clear. At a court appearance in early 2026, Mangione spoke directly to the judge about the prospect of facing back-to-back trials in state and federal court for the same underlying conduct. He said, "It is the same trial twice." His defense team has made a double jeopardy argument, which the courts have not sustained, and has characterized the dual prosecution as an example of government dysfunction and political overreach. The prosecution's position is that the state and federal charges are legally distinct and that both can proceed. The country spent months arguing about what happened on that Manhattan sidewalk. It argued about healthcare. It argued about corporate power. It argued about whether anger justifies action. It argued about who the man in the gray hoodie was and what he represented and whether his supporters were expressing legitimate grievance or celebrating murder. Those arguments will continue. They are not going to be resolved by a jury. But there is something in all of that noise that can get lost if you are not deliberate about bringing it back. Brian Thompson walked out of the Hilton Midtown on the morning of December 4, 2024, to get some air before a conference. He was not a symbol when he stepped onto that sidewalk. He was a man who had a flight home to his family scheduled for that evening. He had 2 teenage sons in Minnesota who were going to grow up without their father because of what happened in the 43 seconds between when he turned left out of that hotel entrance and when a figure stepped out from behind a parked car. His wife Paulette Thompson has not spoken publicly at length about what the last 15 months have been like. His sons have not spoken publicly at all. They are living through something that the entire country has an opinion about, and almost none of those opinions are about them. 2 trials are coming. State court in June. Federal court in September. The evidence that will be presented in both proceedings, the notebook, the shell casings, the ghost gun, the fake IDs, the cell phone data tracing Mangione's movements in the days before and after December 4th, will be heard by a jury for the first time. Case Analysis Bureau will be here for every significant development. Brian Thompson. 50 years old. Maple Grove, Minnesota. Chief Executive Officer of UnitedHealthcare. Shot on a midtown Manhattan sidewalk on December 4, 2024. He had a flight home that evening. He had 2 sons waiting for him. He deserved to make it. Before you go, say Brian's name in the comments. Then tell us, the death penalty is off the table. The terrorism charges were dismissed. The backpack evidence fight is still ongoing. After everything you have heard, where do you think these trials are going? State court in June. Federal court in September. Subscribe to Case Analysis Bureau and turn on your notifications right now. The moment either trial begins, you will hear about it here first. If this video moved you, share it. Brian Thompson's 2 sons deserve to know the world has not forgotten who their father was.